All right. Welcome to the Shoot Your Shot Scorecast, week number 12. This is Richie Chicago. I'm with Furious George and Man in Michigan Hat. And this is brought to you by Thrive Fantasy, the daily fantasy sports app for player props. So, what's awesome about it is it's so easy to play. So, you pick your team just like you do in regular fantasy sports, but let's see, blah, 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 blah. The more points it's worth, the riskier the selection is. So, the more points you have, the better chance you have in winning the prize pool. So, go to Thrive Fantasy app from the iOS App Store or Google Play Store today. But when you do that, enter your promo code FN Fantasy and you get matched anywhere between $20 and $50 after your first deposit. So go and prop up right now. And stay tuned later in the show for our Thrive Fantasy prop picks of the week. All right, Furious George, let's kick it off to you for the rules.
Well, before we get into the rules, let's real quick recap what happened last week in college football. So we went into the week with Richie was at 6-0, Michigan House at 6-0, and myself was at 4-2. And we left the week with one of us at 11-1 and two of us at 6-6. So that means that somebody went 0-6 this week.
Not me, because I'm wearing a suit.
That's right. That's right. People who don't win at all don't get to wear suits. That's right.
Oh man, yeah. I don't have anything to say for myself. Obviously, a very disappointing performance. But as Jim Harbaugh says, I really liked my effort out there. I was really having fun with my picks, and that's all that matters. So,
well, let me just say this. You had picked Ohio State to cover 20.5 points over Indiana. And at one point in the game, I was like, dang it. Because Ohio State, like Indiana kept it close right at first, like 7-7 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But pretty quickly after that, all of a sudden, like Ohio State was up by a lot. And I was like, this is not going well. And then Indiana came storming back. Didn't quite win, but they did cover, which gave Richie and I the points there. All of us picked Wisconsin, and that I honestly felt stupid for picking Wisconsin in hindsight because
I would still make that pick just based on the numbers. Like, obviously knowing they lost, I wouldn't. But like, if I had to make that pick again, not knowing what would happen, I'd pick Wisconsin.
I heard a stat, something like Wisconsin's like 1-5 in their last 6 visits to Ryan Field, which is actually really interesting. And
those
then
are probably way worse Northwestern teams. So,
yeah. And then for Oklahoma State, Man, Michigan Hat, you and I each picked Oklahoma State. Richie picked Oklahoma and locked Oklahoma.
Gotta give props for that one. Locking by himself against two of us picking the other team. Yeah, that was a bold pick in a ranked matchup, and that was a big swing.
So I did an emergency lock on Oklahoma State because my original lock was Clemson, and Friday night, Clemson, Florida State got canceled or postponed. So that became all of our default skips. Because my original skip was Indiana, Ohio State as well. So my emergency lock was Oklahoma State, and that didn't work for me. Yep. Then Shane, you and I both picked Kentucky to cover 31 points against Bama, but Bama I think they won 63-3, something crazy.
I'm checking it now. 63-3. Holy crap. Like, I felt really good about that pick.
I mean, Kentucky's been better the past couple of years than ever before, really. So at football. And then lastly, game of the week, Michigan at Rutgers. Michigan favored by 7.5. Richie and I both picked Rutgers. I don't remember Richie's reasoning. For me, it was just like Michigan hasn't shown me any sign of confidence that I could really pick them to cover or win even. Of course, congratulations, Michigan Hat. They did win.
Thanks. Sure doesn't feel like it.
But Yeah, I know you were mentioning pre-show that it was crazy because they had like multiple opportunities to win by 8, which would have given you the win on that one.
Just based on the way the score was going throughout the game, there was one point where a touchdown would have put us up by 8 and forced them like going into overtime. They bring it close, they tie it. We were up by 8 with like a minute left. Rutgers comes down, scores a touchdown, and converts the 2-point conversion. So then I'm thinking, well, obviously now we're not going to win by 8 because in overtime 6 or 7 or 3 or whatever. But then in 3 overtimes you have to go for 2. So then Michigan had another chance to go up by 8 and missed the 2-point conversion, wins by 6. So I had 2 chances within the last couple minutes of regulation and couldn't win by 8 in either one. So I only have myself to blame, but that was a tough break.
So congratulations to Richie. His own so far through 2 weeks, his only loss picking Wisconsin to cover 7.5 over Northwestern. So that's pretty good if I do say so myself.
Yep.
So I'm proud that I haven't gone winless yet in a week, but I'm tied with you for the same record right now. So again, 11-1 for Richie and 6-6 for both myself and Michigan Hat. So but yeah, so let's get into the rules for this week. We're gonna do our college picks for you now. But before we start, as always, every episode we make our picks for the big games for the upcoming week. For college, we try to do all of the top 5 ranked team games, as well as any matchups that also feature ranked opponents against each other. We also always include Notre Dame and Michigan since those are our team allegiances. We always have to use a skip, which is worth 0 wins or losses. We have to use a lock, which is worth 2 wins or losses. And every other pick is worth 1 win or loss. We keep track of our records, and by the end of the season, there will be a reward of some sort for the winner. It's still to be determined because we are all procrastinators. So get ready for the best pick'em show out there because, unlike every single other one, we won't be wrong.
At least Richie won't be.
So
for
far.
College football.
For college football, yeah.
All right. So let's get into it. First up on our slate is Richie's and my team, number 2, Notre Dame, at number 25, North Carolina. Notre Dame favored by 4.5 on the road. So this game is interesting because you have number 2 in the nation having beaten number 1 a few games ago, coming off of a bye week. But North Carolina is no slouch of a team. Howell had like the performance of his lifetime a few weeks ago when what did he throw, like 6 or 7 touchdowns that game? Like just a crazy game. But so Notre Dame 4.5. I understand why it's lower, probably because of Howell's performance. The bye week, honestly, more than anything, is what kind of concerns me for Notre Dame in this game. But I'm honestly very confident that Notre Dame will not lose sight of their season-long goals, being make it in the college football playoff. So I've actually decided to lock Notre Dame to cover the 4.5. So
nice.
There's my lock right off the bat. And our locks are brought to you by the Shoot Your Shot Sports merch store. Go to shop.shootyourshotsports.com. Check out our latest gear. Hats, shirts, sweaters, and mugs are dropping often. So go there to lock down the gear of your favorite shows right now. All right, Richie, what is your pick for this game?
Awesome. So before I do my pick, I do have a stat for you. Notre Dame is 18-1 all time against North Carolina, and the Fighting Irish won the most recent head-to-head matchup. So I'm taking Notre Dame spread minus 4.5. So I think that was an easy one.
Very nice. North Carolina honestly is hugely overrated. This is just my opinion, but they've already lost to Florida State this year, who is trash. They lost to Virginia, who is trash. And then they just gave up 53 points to Wake Forest,
Oof.
More like wake up call, Forest. Notre Dame is going to clap their cheeks. This is my lock of the week.
Boy. 2 locks in Notre Dame. We all picked them, which means North Carolina is probably going to
go
win.
wrong.
I'm afraid to use that lock when we all like have the same pick, so I'm not locking this one.
Yeah, this is the second time that 2 of us have locked the same game.
Yep.
What was it last week? It was Miami. Denver.
Yeah, you and Richie each picked locked the Dolphins.
Yep,
which didn't work out well. But we'll get into the NFL.
We'll get to that.
On a different Scorecast. Yep. All right. Next up, Richie, I'm going to throw this one over to you, but we have number 3 Ohio State at Illinois. Ohio State favored by 28.5 big ones. What's your thoughts?
Right. My thoughts are I don't bet the teams, I bet the numbers, and the number's too big, so I'm skipping this one. Again, that's like my cop out. I don't like big numbers. So on to Man in Michigan Hat.
I respect that. Yeah, it's sorry, get my notes together. It is a big number, and it's a brutal number to pick because that half point makes this a 5-score game. Ohio State's obviously the better team. They are going to win this game, and they're going to win by multiple scores, but not by 28.5. Give me the Illini and all those sweet, juicy points.
I kind of went back and forth in this game a lot too, even considering a skip at one point as well. But I don't know. Ohio State, they did show some flaws against Indiana for sure, but Illinois is not Indiana. As much as I love Lovie Smith and his sweet old man beard, I'm going to pick Ohio State to just blow out Illinois in this one. All right. Next up, we have a ranked versus ranked matchup, our second one of our slate. Number 22, Auburn, visiting number 1, Alabama. Alabama by 23.5. Michigan Hat, why don't you start on this one?
So we just talked about how betting against Alabama went last week, and the answer was not well. But this is a ranked rivalry game, and Bama's favored by 4 scores. I don't think Auburn's very good, but just out of principle, I have to take those points. Anytime you have ranked versus ranked rivals, 4 scores is too much. Give me another big underdog to cover, and this may burn me badly, but I'll take Auburn.
Very nice. Well, I am going to skip this one. This is my skip of the week. And by the way, we didn't mention that our skips are brought to you by our Fanatics store. We don't want you to skip out on an opportunity to gear up for the season. So go to shootyourshotsports.com/fanatics and click on the link there to purchase through Fanatics. Richie, you skipped Ohio State, Illinois. So this is another big number. What are your thoughts on this one?
So this one, I'm pull up my notes. I've been back and forth with this. Since it's ranked versus ranked, I'm gonna ride with Michigan Hat. I'm gonna go Auburn plus 23.5. So
none of us picked Alabama.
Yeah, this would be interesting.
Dangerous place to be, I feel.
I know, but bold predictions make bold wins.
That's true, which is why I skipped it.
So what was your pick, Richie? Sorry, I missed that.
Auburn.
Auburn, gotcha.
All right. We got Pitt visiting number 4, Clemson. Clemson is favored by 25, which again is kind of like the Ohio State number where that extra point going from 24 to 25 pushes you into instead of like 3 touchdowns and a field goal, 24 points, you have to have 26, 27, 28. It just makes it a little trickier. But I'm going to throw it over to Richie to start on this one.
Wait, what did you say?
I'm going to throw it over to Richie to start on this one.
Pittsburgh.
Sorry, it was cutting out. My bad.
There you go.
Oh, whoops.
All right. So let me pull up my notes. I'm thinking Clemson. Pittsburgh's not even ranked at all. I think Clemson will blow them out. So we're going Clemson minus 25. Hopefully by like 5 touchdowns. So hopefully.
Oh boy. I also am going Clemson. I feel pretty confident they will beat Pittsburgh by at least four touchdowns, I would think. Yeah. So Clemson's my pick there too. Michigan hat.
Yeah, historically Pittsburgh is always a scary underdog to bet against. But they're not great this year. And this feels like it's going to be a statement win for Clemson. Not a signature win because, again, Pittsburgh's not that good, but just a statement win.
Yeah.
They're in a bigger regular season fight, Clemson is, than they've been for years. Now that you've lost a game, every game, if it wasn't already, is a must win if you want to make the playoffs. And this, to me, feels like a 60-something to 13-something type game where Clemson gets back on track. So I really like them to cover this week, which is dangerous because we're all picking Clemson, but yeah, I feel pretty good about this one.
Yeah, I agree. In some way, it's ironic because I locked Notre Dame, but in some ways, I almost feel more confident about picking Clemson to win big over Pitt than I do Notre Dame to win by even just one touchdown over North Carolina.
And it's a way different level of competition, obviously, too. So.
Yeah, but there's like the pessimist part of me that's concerned Notre Dame will like eke out a victory, but.
Yep.
I felt that way about Notre Dame Boston College, and they ended up winning pretty comfortably in that game. So, All right. Number 15, Iowa State. At number 20, Texas. So Michigan hat, are you hooking them horns or you riding with Iowa State?
This one is tough to pick, being a Big Ten fan with this being a Big 12 matchup, but it is probably the best game of the week. Kind of like that Oklahoma State game last week. Like one I'm not super confident in just based on knowledge of the teams, but looking forward to the game. I am pretty high on Iowa State this year. Their head coach, Matt Campbell, he's personally for me at the top of my list for Michigan's next head coach. Really good program, really good fundamentally. Texas has talent, but has been kind of less consistent this year, and I don't think should be the favorite, even as the home team. So give me Iowa State and the safety.
Ooh.
Nice.
Richie.
I'm going to do Texas -2. Don't know much about these two teams, but I feel like Texas could win. I don't know much about that. I think it's coin flip for me, honestly. So I'm gonna pick Texas.
Gotcha. All right. Well, being that Richie has only one loss in his record in college football, I'm very happy to announce that I've also selected Texas for this matchup. I also, kind of similar to what you guys were saying, I don't know much about either of these teams. I know that Texas has underperformed this year from what their expectations were at the beginning of this year, and it seems like Iowa State's more overperformed expectations, and it's just a weird year in college football. But that being said, I like Texas to win by a field goal or more.
All right, got it down.
All right. Lastly, the big game of the week probably would have been considered a big game in the beginning of the year of the season.
The National Preseason Hype Bowl.
0-5 Penn State visits the Big House, and 2-3 Michigan. Michigan is favored by 2 points. So I'm gonna say Michigan hat for last on this one.
I'll go first.
Yeah.
Go, Richard.
So I haven't locked anything yet, and this will be my lock actually. I'm doing Michigan -2. We'll see how this goes.
Wow. You're a braver man than I am.
Wow.
Okay.
Looks like I may or may not wear a suit next week, so we'll see what happens.
If you do, you earned it. All right. Michigan lock. I feel gross even typing that.
I said earlier in the show, when we were doing our review from last week, that Michigan has yet to prove to me that I can really trust them to cover or win. And even though they did win against Rutgers, it's Rutgers, and it was just I don't know. It was one of those victories where I'm not a Michigan fan, but thinking about you, Michigan hat, it like kind of left a bad taste in my mouth, that victory.
Mhm.
So anyway, that being said, I'm picking Penn State for the upset. I feel like I don't see Penn State going undefeated the whole year. And when you have two imploding teams facing off against each other, I feel like it sets up perfectly for a Penn State victory.
Yeah, this one, okay. Firstly, the big question when you first look at this is how is Michigan favored in the game? And it's because Penn State is absolute dog crap.
Yeah.
And when you look at this rivalry for the past several years, the home team has blown out the visitor and covered the spread going back like 6 years. I don't know how relevant that is without fans, but I really have nothing else to base my prediction on. Both teams are trash, and whichever one can find any shred of life or coaching ability could blow the other team out and win easily. But I just have no idea who that team would be. I got burned betting on Michigan as a favorite last week, and I'm not doing it again. I'm skipping this game. I couldn't bet on Penn State either because I do think they're a worse team than Michigan, but I'm just staying far away from this one just for emotional reasons too. Like it was emotional enough to have to endure that Michigan Rutgers game, but I felt pressured to watch it even more just based on our picks, and it just made it that much worse. So I'm not going to compound my pain again this week. Skip.
Yeah, it's an emphatic skip. Listeners, I'll tell you that I texted our little group chat on Saturday. I said, what's the bigger joke, Michigan or the Michigan hat picking Michigan to cover? So anyway, which now Richie has not only picked Michigan to cover, but locked in Michigan covering. So
honestly, 2 points isn't bad. 7.5. What was it 7.5 last week? Was a lot. I feel like.
Yeah.
I mean, he had one touchdown, but I feel like it was gonna be like.
But I mean, it's Rutgers.
Yeah, I know. I know. But we won though. So,
I know
Yeah.
I won.
On the right side.
If I can like separate myself from the like emotional side of it, which is impossible to do, like logically, I would think I'd probably take Michigan to cover, but I just can't separate that side of me as a fan.
And you had to use a skip.
Yeah, and there's no reason to feel confident betting on them at this point. So I mean, I would probably take them logically, but I just couldn't do it. Yeah.
Plus, they're coming off a win. They have to be kind of like, amped about that. So
I feel like they have more reason to be hyped up than Penn State does. Like,
yeah.
Penn State's season's already over for sure.
They came off a huge win against Minnesota and then dropped the ball against Michigan State, though.
Oof.
Like, it's just one of those years where anything can happen. And to me, Michigan has shown themselves to be more incompetent than competent. I haven't watched a second of Penn State, so I have nothing to say there. But I feel like nobody expected Penn State to be 0-5. I feel like it's a big ask for Penn State to go 0-8. So I feel like at some point they're going to get their victory, and might as well be against Michigan.
And I will say, on it. Yeah, I could see that. And I'll say again, I think I said this on our Scorecast last time, that once again, I got to mention Penn State getting very little national criticism for their 0-5 start, despite the fact they were labeled the preseason competition for Ohio State, a possible dark horse playoff team, possibly a second Big Ten team to make the playoff, and they start 0-5 and nobody says crap. But then Jim Harbaugh is now 2-3, and he deserves all the criticism he's getting. But every day there's a new article about him on ESPN. It's just like, if Michigan, I'm just going to mention that right now. But if Michigan beats Penn State, I'm going to hammer that hard next week. Because Penn State will be by far a bigger laughingstock than Michigan, which they already are.
Yeah,
but if Michigan beats them, I'm going to hammer that next week. Just fair warning.
I 100% agree with you on that. So, all right. Well, that's our college picks of the week. Tune in on Sunday for our NFL picks as well.
All right. So as we close, as Shane finds his notes, All right.
Speaking of incompetent,
Just following the theme of my my teams. So this concludes the Shoot Your Shot Scorecast for this week for our college football picks. Remember to subscribe so you never miss another pick. Also, be sure to follow all of us on Twitter at Richie Chicago, at Furious George 94, and at Michigan Hat. And then now we have a Twitter for the show. What was the tag for that?
at
SYSS Scorecast.
Scorecast, yeah.
There you go.
SYSS Scorecast.
SYSS Scorecast. So follow all three of us individually and follow the show on Twitter for our dumb commentary on the games we're watching and for updates on how we're doing on our picks. Also tweet at us, message us, let us know what your picks are. We'd love to hear from you. With all of the uncertainty in the world in 2020, there's one thing that is certain, and that's our predictions. Thanks for tuning in. See you next week for more correct picks.
Go Penn State.
Awesome.